So this is Joy Foster, founder of Tech Pixies, and we are interviewing Janene Liston today, the pricing lady. So if you've ever struggled with pricing, I know I certainly did in the early days. I think this is going to be something that you are going to value. We are all about earning what you're worth this month. And so this is a great opportunity to talk to someone who knows what it's like to help people earn what they're worth. So Janene, how did you end up with the name, the pricing lady?
How did I end up with the name? Okay, then I'll start the story there. Actually, I was doing pricing in the corporate world for about 15 years or so. And I exited it. And when I exited, I didn't know what to call myself. I didn't want to be a coach and I didn't want to be a consultant, but I didn't have another idea. So I just kind of waffled around for a while. And then one day I was at a meeting with someone and I didn't remember them, but they remembered me. And they said, "Oh, you're the pricing lady." And it made me realize that as I was traveling around the globe in the corporate world, launching all these pricing projects, I would arrive in a new location, not know anybody, but walk into the meeting room and start introducing myself. "Hi, I'm Janene." And they say, yeah, I know you. You're the pricing lady. And I decided, well, if that works for everybody, why not just take it with me? So literally it was,
I love that.
Yeah. People couldn't remember. Janene is not the most common of names, especially outside of, in other parts of the world. So it was always difficult for people to remember, pronounce sometimes. So, but the pricing lady, they always remember it.
Well, I have a friend who's known as the email guy, so I think it's actually not a bad thing to be known as the guy or the lady or whatever of whatever you do, because that kind of resonates with people. So right. I would love to know, I've been asking our guests as we have been doing this series to tell a story where they woke up to the fact that they weren't pricing what they should be pricing, or they weren't charging what they were worth. Or maybe you have a story of yourself or one of your clients that you could be, that would be willing to let you share. But tell us about a time where you realized that there was a problem, maybe for yourself or even how you helped a client through it.
Yeah. So, one of the first times that I really came into contact with the topic of pricing, I was hired as a pricing manager for a company that makes high voltage test and measurement equipment. Sounds super boring. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you to sleep. Actually, we made lightning. That was a really cool way to say what we did. And we had a profitability problem in the service department. And so one day I just got really curious and I was like, okay, what are we doing? And I'm going to use some numbers here. I'm going to use nice round numbers because they're easy to do the math, right? But we had a philosophy. All of our service products were priced 10 times material cost. And, people might think, oh, wow, that's a big, 10 times. Wow, you're really taking advantage of people. But here's what I found out. So I took a product from our list, and this particular product, it took $1 of material to create it. So we were selling it for 10. And then I looked at, in our company, we're what they called vertically integrated. So we manufactured everything from raw material. And it took 1 hour to make this part, and a fully loaded labor hour cost $75.
Wow.
So we were charging 10 and our costs without overheads were 76 already.
Wow. And 10 times that is like 760.
Exactly. So we should have been charging much more. Well, the story goes on from there that when I looked at what competitors were selling that was similar, they were selling theirs between $90 and $120. Okay. And then I went and talked to one of the engineers and I found out that our little device had a fail safe on it. So what happened is you put this little device in a great big electrical system. They're usually somewhere between $250,000 and maybe $1.5 million, the whole system. And this little device would protect it. When it pulled too much power from the wall, from the outlet in the wall, it would shut the system down and protect the rest of it. And our competitors, their part didn't have that piece.
Oh my gosh.
So from a value perspective, we could have even been selling it for more. And that was without having any background in pricing, just being naturally curious. We realized that we had a real profit and price problem in the service department, that we weren't looking at things in the right way. And, service department is usually a cash cow for a company. So that's, a big corporate not a big corporate, but that's more of a medium-sized business example. But it was very telling for me because it shows you, okay, cost plus is what a lot of product businesses use versus the competition is what a lot of service businesses use. And then you have value pricing on top of it. When you understand the value of what you're delivering people, whether it's through services or products, you have a much better idea of what you can charge, and you're less likely to underprice yourself.
That is genius. I mean, we could just if we could just replay that about 10 times, I think everyone would get so much out of it. So, right. All right, you said something in there that I think is really important, value pricing. So let's talk about that. A lot of women at Tech Pixies are setting up as freelancers in social media. Not all of them. We have a lot of women who are setting up product businesses as well. So I think we want to have a conversation about both. But let's talk about our pricing per hour versus value pricing, because that's something that I have to say for a long time, I made a lot of the same mistakes you just talked about. I think when I first started, I joined a business club and I was building websites, and I was first thing I was doing was not calculating my time properly. So I was making websites and I thought they were taking me 4 hours to create. That's literally what I thought. And my husband was like, I'm pretty sure that's not the case because you're away from the family way more than 4 hours. So he challenged me to start calculating my time. And so what I realized is most websites took me from start to finish, including all customer conversation, all invoicing, all admin, all blah, 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 all meetings, was around 100 hours minimum. And I was charging for 4. And so we worked out my hourly rate was less than a pound. It was 89p or something like that. And so that was my first wake up call. So that's when I started saying, okay, I'm tracking my hours. And then that's when I started putting an hourly rate onto my invoices. I'd say, okay, so it's 100 hours, whatever. Now here's the interesting thing that happened. And I think this is where the value conversation comes in. The more websites I built, and the better systems I built, the faster I was able to create the same thing. It took me, So eventually what we ended up doing was we picked one theme. We worked in WordPress. We picked one theme. Instead of creating custom themes for every single person that wanted one, we just said, okay, well, this is the one theme we use. And then you just tell us what you want and where. And that ended up dramatically cutting down on the time. And we ended up going from what would have been 100 hours to build a website, to maybe 50 hours to build a website. But we were giving them the same website, if not a better website, because we then had more time to do new things. So that's where I didn't get the value piece. That's where I didn't understand that we should have been charging for 50 hours, we should have been charging what we were charging 100 hours for because we got better at it. But so I think a lot of people struggle with that. And I think, but in the social media space where a lot of people are doing service, there is really this competition to charge per hour. And I think, when people say their hourly rate, anywhere from 15 pounds to 20 pounds to 60 pounds to 150 pounds, people cringe a bit. And so also starting to understand the value delivery on that. So I think this is an opportunity for you to give us some teaching on this, and really help us explore how to charge for value, but also not forgetting that you are putting hours and time into something, for sure. And then the last thing I was going to say was, and maybe just giving you my experience will help you frame what you say. I did start employing people, and then I couldn't pay them because I wasn't charging a premium. I wasn't charging a 2 times, 3 times, whatever, 10 times. I wasn't doing any of that. So I was in this business club, and an accountant who's now our accountant for Tech Pixies, he said to me, you've got to charge your junior employees, you have to charge their time at 30 pounds an hour at least, and you have to charge your time at 60 pounds an hour at least. Even if you pay yourself 15 pounds an hour, you've got to charge it so that you've got money for the company and
you've got profit and overhead.
Yeah. So, and then I think the last little piece of information to give you is I just wasn't brave enough. I was I did do the 30 and the 60. I started at 25 and 50 and went up to 30 and 60, but I still wasn't covering the cost of the company, to deliver the service we were providing. And I was scared to raise my prices because I was scared if I raise my prices, no one's going to work with me.
Yeah.
And knowing what I know now, that's not true. But I know a lot of people think that way. So I'd love for you to speak into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, I know. I just thought I'd throw it out all in.
You just throw it out. Okay. Very good. All right. So I think the first thing that I'd like to throw out there, this came to me about a month ago and I got really excited about it because I love analogies. So time is the wrapper that you deliver your services in. It's not the value. You don't buy the cereal for the box. Well, occasionally you buy the cereal for the box, like, the Wheaties, the Olympic division, editions and whatever. But in general, you buy the cereal, you buy it for the cereal, not for the box. And when it comes to time-based services, what we're doing is when we price based on a day or an hour or things like that, we're saying that the value is in the time that we give. And actually, the majority of the value is in our expertise, not in the time itself. So this is a really important differentiation. Now, some of that's going to make some people out there feel really uncomfortable because that, they feel, well, that's how everybody else does it. I can tell you, I work with consultants, I work with freelancers, I work with service providers of other types. And when they're able to make that shift from a time-based strategy to more packages, then it actually shifts their business and it shifts them and their clients away from being so focused on the time. The hard part is that you kind of have to let go of the time thing and realize sometimes it's going to take you more time and you're not going to get compensated for that directly. And other times it's going to take you less and you're not going to charge your customers less. So this is more for standard type things, right? And then of course, for your more bespoke or custom offers where somebody really wants something special, then you have to do a calculation. But what I do with my clients is we always do two calculations in the background. One is time-based so that we can understand how efficiently you're working and make sure that you have capacity to do the work, as much work as you need in order to hit your financial targets. At the same time, we do a value calculation.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Wait. This is really important. If anyone is watching this and they're like multitasking, come back. Or if you're listening to this multitasking, come back. You have to listen to this because I just wrote this out in our strategy module. I said the same thing. I said, you have to be aware of the time. You can't just say, here's the value. You have to know how much time it takes you. But like you said, that's the wrapper. I love that because that's just a piece, right? Time is just a piece. And you do need to be aware of the time that it does need to, you need to know that it's what it's taking from your life, but really it's about the value. And when you talk about the value, you're talking about the value the customer gets, right?
The value the customer gets. Absolutely. I mean, because, and you brought up a very good point that I want to make sure that we bring into this again. As you grow and develop in your business, you're going to become not only more efficient, but you're going to be able to bring more value into what you do for people. That efficiency is also a value. If you can build the website, for example, quicker than this person can, people are going to be willing to pay for that as long as the quality is there, right? And you want to share in that value. So maybe, that extra day that you save in time, maybe you don't, you share the value of that between you and your customer, so you both benefit, right? So, but it has a value to it, and you need to be aware of that so that you can incorporate that into what you're charging.
So how do you convey this value? Because that, I think, is where people also get tripped up. Because I look at Tech Pixies and I look at, the way that we used to price it in the early days. And I totally did that. I just priced it based on like, oh, people can't afford it, so I'm going to give a cheaper price. And actually what I found, two things that I found, the more that I charged for it, the more dedicated the students became because it was a bigger stake for them. But then the second thing is I did the math, and it's like, if you start earning 1,000 pounds a month, just even on a basic level, if you start earning 1,000 pounds a month from our program, because you've done our program, and you earn 1,000 pounds a month for the next 10 years, that's 12,000 pounds a year. That's 120,000 pounds. Like
Yes.
I should be charging a heck of a lot more from our course.
Yes, I agree. So I'm going to share something with you. I call it the show me the money matrix.
Nice. I love it. Show me the money. I love it.
Okay, this is how we extract value from the services or from the value that our products and services provide. And there's four things. There's four questions we ask, and the questions go like this: how do I help my clients or my customers improve the quality of what they're doing, of their life, or what they're offering? Yeah. How do I help them be more competitive? If it's B2B, that's usually very important. B2C, it can still work depending on the situation. Like if you're a career coach, you can help them be more competitive on the marketplace. How do I help my clients create economic efficiency? So save time, save money, or increase how much they earn. And then the fourth one is, how do I help them reduce risk?
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. And in these four areas, so risk, quality, competitive advantage, and economic efficiency, those four areas will help you extract the value, and then you can start quantifying it. So I was working with someone who is a stylist, not Kathy, but another lady.
she shall not be named.
I want to clarify that because I don't want to panic her if she's watching. But I was working with a client. We were talking about, what's the value? She goes, well, I don't think there is value. And I was like, well, what do you do with a client? She goes, well, I go shop. Well, first of all, that's how many hours in the store that I don't have to be going through things and trying things on and putting them back and under those harsh lights. I mean,
those are horrible.
Say there's risk. You're saving risk there, risk of seeing yourself in those horrible lights and mirrors.
I hate those lights. They always make you look awful.
There's the time that you save, the energy. I mean, actually, there's quite a bit there. And how can you quantify that? Well, let's say in order to pick out a new wardrobe, let's just say it's 3 looks. How much time would that take you if you went shopping?
Yeah. Well, it
maybe a couple of trips, a half a day each, right? So instead, somebody who knows and understands your style, what would look good on you, what would fit well on you, they can go pick things out, send it to you, and you can try it on in the comfort of your own home. So you're saving time. Yeah, you're saving time, you're saving energy. So you can start to add those things up, and then you can compare that to what you've calculated in terms of your effort, in terms of time. And as long as this number is higher, then you're giving good value for money. And then you also have to consider, as you said, what sustainable savings do they have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I think one of the things in the social media space, and I love the idea of packaging, because, and what I'm talking, we have a strategy module releasing next week. It's totally brand new. We've revamped the whole thing, and it's really based on what I've listened to the community say, and also my own experience. But I think one of the things that I am finding is, and if I was to go back and be a social media manager again, I'm actually a coach in a way. I'm a social media coach. I'm also, a mindset coach and all that stuff. But what's interesting is if I was to go back to the early days and think about how I package things, that's where, this is that efficiency that you're talking about. And I think if I was a social media manager again, what I would say is I would present packages. And I would know exactly how much time those packages were going to take. And if you don't know, you can start by just doing them, and then do a client for 3 months and get an idea. But create packages, kind of a low, medium, and a high. And I think what the average person will go for the medium package, not the high or the low. Okay,
it depends.
Depends on the client, right?
Well, yes, but it also depends. There's 2 key factors when you put packages together like that: the prices and their relationship to each other, because you can actually steer customer behavior by how you set the differences between the prices and the packages, as well as what you include in different packages. So what you include will sort of force, I hate to use that word, but it will encourage people to, make a decision. I want this or I don't want this.
Yes.
I'd like this included, but not that. And if there's something in here that they really want, it will naturally put them in that category. So based on what you put in the packages and, whether the prices are vastly different or close to each other is going to influence it. And the reason that having 3 is so good is because of this. What's the best way to sell a 5,000 pound offer?
Have a 10,000 pound one.
Exactly. Put it next to a 10,000 pound one. Exactly. And so that's another reason. So it's about trade-offs. It's about giving customers choice and letting them control how much value and how much value they want to get, how much they want to pay, or how they want to work with you, as well as then, how you position the prices for different packages.
Well, and the other thing that I think packages help with, particularly in the service industry, but I think it works also for other, so like, let's say you're a fitness coach, right? I think packages work really well with fitness coaches. But if you're, let's say, one of the things I think that helps with the packages is not only kind of steering them towards the one you want them to buy, but it also allows you to create efficiency within those packages and create repeatable processes. And just, like I was saying, it kind of, you can something that used to take you 100 hours, you can do in 50, but you should still charge as if it was for 100 because, you've got all that knowledge and all that learning there. Right. The other thing too is I think packages, in a way, they help you to solidify what services you offer. I think so many people come out and they're like, I'll do anything, and that's a bad idea because you can't.
That's the kiss of death.
But you cannot be everything to everyone, right? No. So the other thing too, I think a lot of people face is they'll work with a client or a customer, and the client doesn't really know what it should cost, right? So they're just fishing. They're trying to find maybe 2 or 3 quotes from different people to decide what they're going to go forwards with. So the other thing too, I think that packages do is when someone doesn't know what their budget is, or, because that was a mistake I made a lot. On the very first meeting when I would meet with a client, they'd say, well, what's your hourly rate? And I'd be like, 15 pounds an hour, or, 30 pounds an hour, or 60 pounds an hour, and totally missing the point of actually what I was delivering and what they needed. So I now advise all of the ladies who go through our program, I say, look, don't talk money on the first conversation. What you really want to know is what's their problem? Like, what are you trying to solve?
Assessment.
And then once you know what their problem is, then you can go to the drawing board and you can say, okay, and then I always say, ask them what their budget is. And if they don't know what their budget is, then you've got to go to the drawing board and create something. But if they give you a budget, then you know what you're working with. And then you can look at all the things you offer and you can say, well, I can include that, but I can't include that. And so is that advice you would give people?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know that. So some people, a lot of people, I would say, they struggle with how to bring up this money conversation when they're having these discussions. And one client I had, we did an exercise where I asked everybody in the group, I said, complete the following statement: money is, and you just write down the first thing that comes to mind. Anyways, for him, he said, pricing is in this case. Pricing is something I avoid. And that was the first thing he wrote down. And it was really telling because he very much had his head in the sand, and he was actually trying to avoid having that conversation with clients.
And guess what happens when you avoid the money conversation?
You can't sell anything.
No, it's just, I read a book once by Kyle Cease, and it talks about the illusion of money. And what he says is money's like a friend. And if you think your friend is icky and you don't want to hang out with your friend, guess what? They're not going to want to hang out with you either. So you got to look at money as like a friend. If you want money, you have to encourage money to come hang out with you. You've got to be open to money coming into your life. And I think that was a real changer for me, because if you think money is slimy and dirty and bad, you're not going to hang out with it, and it's not going to hang out with you. And really, money is just a tool, right? It's an energy. It's a tool. It's energy exchange.
And, we have hangups with money. So I always talk to people about the 5 steps to pricing success. And the first step is mindset, because if you feel money is the root of all evil, imagine what's going through your mind every time you're trying to do something pricing related in your business, right? It's having an influence. So it's really important. And one of the interesting things about when it comes to money, so we usually have hang-ups in three areas, or I can only think of the German word right now, Hindernisse, like blocks, right? Like core belief blocks. Can't think of the right phrase. And it's money, success, and worthiness.
Yes.
Those three are really tough. What's interesting about money is we have this image in our head that there's a finite amount out there. But when we break it down, what's happening all the time? Countries are printing money like crazy. And just because you have money doesn't mean that I don't. And just because I have some doesn't mean that somebody else does. There's more than enough to go around. But the way that we've been raised, and especially for women, sometimes the relationship that we've been taught to have with money is that it's okay to give it, but not to have it.
Amen to that.
And we disguise that as like fairness. I want to be fair. But the word fair actually implies, it doesn't even imply, it states big and bold equality. So I had a client who she said, I want to be fair. So I pay my employees well, I pay my vendors well, I give good prices to my customers, and she doesn't pay herself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not fair. And she won't be there to keep serving her customers and employing her employees and working with those vendors if she can't figure out how to be fair to herself as well as everybody else. And I think this is a really big problem for women because our definition of fair is messed up.
It is. Our definition of fair is, well, I mean, actually, there's a book by Eve Rodsky, which I love, which is called Fair Play. And she does make the argument that fair is not equal and equal is not fair, in the sense that, you know, in some cases, you have to, you know, one person has to do more of the housework than the other person, but that person needs to value the time fairly, like that they need to say, look, someone taking care of the children is just as valuable as someone going to work. It's about equalizing the value of what people do. But I really hear you there, because so many women do not pay themselves. They don't have a cash flow forecast. If they did have a cash flow forecast, they don't have a line that says me on it, right? And this is something, I'm not joking. Like, I even had to pull up my P&L for the last few years and then put it forward for this grant that we were going for.
Right.
And you can see exactly at what stage I started valuing myself. Right. And it was way later than it should have been, right? And you can see the line that says director's remuneration, and it was zero for a very long time. And I've been there, I've done that. I so feel that conversation. So I think it's really important for people to recognize that this is a problem that a lot of women face. You are not alone. If you have not calculated yourself into your business, you're not alone. But you need to stop it.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to, I was just checking out the comments as you were saying that. So Gloria, I hope you don't mind if I address what you wrote here. So you said, you know, your challenge is that you survived on no money, and you know what that's like. And so it stops you from pricing higher. So let me address that, because there's one thing, when we should never assume that someone can't afford it. That's a little bit arrogant, I would even go so far to say, you know. And if you were on the receiving end of that and you felt like the other person was looking at you, treating you like you couldn't afford it, that might be a bit offensive for you. So we should always assume that people can, and then they'll let us know when they can't. Now, one way to hold your value with clients who can pay, but to serve audiences that can't, is to go through organizations. So you take what you're offering and you offering it to, say, like, I work with a lot of startups. There's different types of non-tech startups, organizations, which you tend to have a little bit less funding. So they're more like small business startups as opposed to tech startups. And they don't get as much funding as the big tech startups. So you could go to them and the organization themselves and say, hey, I have this program. I'd like to offer it to the people in your program, your paid program, right? I will give it to you at a reduced rate on the condition that they pay at least half of that rate. So I pay a part by giving you a lower price. The organization pays part, and the individual who participates in the program. This enables them to get it at a price that they can afford, but they still have skin in the game. So they're going to, take that with more enthusiasm. They're going to participate and in that process more so. And because they have the opportunity also to participate in something they might not otherwise. So there's a way to handle that kind of business without sinking your own ship.
Well, and I think what I want to point out here, and Gloria's business is in fitness, so that it'll be interesting we've had some interest. She does a warrior Zumba or a warrior yoga class, which I'm very keen to start doing. But it was very interesting because, and Gloria, I hope you don't mind, we're picking on you. I sent her a message. I said, I want to do your warrior Zumba or your warrior yoga course. And she messaged me back and she's like, here's the bank details. It's £6. And I was like, what? And I just said to her, I said, hold on. You want to charge me a monthly rate, you want to stick me in a private Facebook group where I can go and do the course every single week, and you want to charge me more than £6. You want to do a block charge. So immediately, we were talking about, okay, well, what if she charged 60 or 24 pounds per month? Well, immediately that makes a customer for a year, 240, now I kept 48. It's like 268 pounds per year. So suddenly what you were charging someone £6 for, potentially they're now, almost a 300-pound customer. So I think it's important to think about the bigger picture and to think about what and like you said, your ideal customer is out there. The customer who wants to pay you is out there. And we talk a lot about your ideal customer is the one that pays you. The people you want to help, those are different. And you can help people that you want to help when you're getting paid properly. Like that's really important.
Exactly.
But one exercise that I did really interestingly just this week, which blew my mind, and I want to share this here because I think it's a perfect conversation to have it with. So I'm doing a transformational coaching program myself. I'm always doing coaching. And, this money thing's been a huge deal for me for a long time. So he gave us a list of values and we had to pick 10 values and you could only pick 10. And then he does this exercise where you then have to pay with your values. So like, for example, if you wanted to prevent World War III, you had to give one of your values up. If you wanted to get forgiveness for something you did to somebody, you'd have to give a value up. And the stakes get higher as you go. And then it's like, if you could have everything in the world, what value would you give up? So anyway, as we go through this whole exercise, and I've got 10 values, and then I got a hot seat, and I love hot seats because, people can really go deep into, whatever your issue is. And I said, look, here's the deal. I was like, I have a really successful company. I said, I've totally transformed the way I think about it. We're, finally we're pricing correctly. We're making money, blah, blah, blah. I said, but I still have nothing in my bank account, my personal bank account. I still have nothing. And I said, and I'm generous and I'm kind and I'm, and he's like, let me stop you right there. He's like, tell me your 10 values. What was in your 10 values? And I was, I list off the values, faith, family, love, authenticity, all these things that people who know me know are my values, right? I've got them here. So, and he says, you don't have money as one of your values.
Interesting.
And I was just like, what? And he's like, yeah, if you want money in your life, it has to be a value.
It has to be a priority. Yeah.
And he also said, and this was so interesting. He said, people don't pay for preventative health. They pay for the aftermath. So you don't pay to have a trainer to work with regularly so that you don't get back pain. You go and pay for the back pain specialist, right? And he said also, you might have family as one of your top priorities, but if you can't feed your family, if you can't provide a nice home for them to live in, if you can't, take care of them, then, that's not going to work. So I think for me, the penny dropped when he said, money's not even in your top 10. You're not focused on it. You're not valuing it. And I might be doing that for the company. And, I might be focused because I got to pay people. I got to pay for my employees, right? I got to pay for the business, but I'm not thinking about it as my personal value. And so that was such a
interesting. Yeah, that is really interesting. Because I would think most people probably wouldn't even consider money being a value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you know what? If you don't have a good relationship with it, if you don't value, just like a friend, go back to money being a friend, right? If money is a friend you value, you'll spend time with that friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's such an important thing, because women just don't have a relationship with money. We don't have a friendship. We don't have we don't, and we need to do that.
There's a company, I don't have it here on the desk, called Money Habitudes. And I have a deck of cards that I use with clients where we explore their habit and attitudes, right? And you can also do an online test with them. And I think they do, I see if I can remember the 6 areas. The relationships are planning, security, giving, spontaneity, and right now I'm not remembering the other ones, but it was really interesting because, of course, when I first ran across it, I did it for myself and I did it for a few friends and colleagues as a test. And for me, my values were planning and security. I went to university because I wanted to always be able to take care of myself. I've always, saved my money for a rainy day, used it wisely, have no debt. That was just me. And then I saw this and I was like, oh yeah. It doesn't mean that I don't have the other ones, but that drives. And you might think, oh, that's a great relationship to have, which it is, but it also has its downside. It means that I don't necessarily like to take a lot of risk with my money either. And as a business owner, sometimes you just got to throw the cash out there and give it a whirl.
That's true. And what you're making is a great point there, that your background and your history really dictates what you do with money. But you actually have to grow up. Everyone has to grow up at some point and say, all right, I'm an adult now. I'm going to let go of what my past said, and I'm going to embrace what I want for my future. And what does that look like? Right. Someone's saying here, money versus love. And I want to just point out, you can have love and money, right? Yeah, you can have both. And, and I always say to people, don't marry for money, marry for love. I married for love for sure. But I think what's great about the fact that I married for love is that I know people who married for money and they're miserable. So right. I think it's important to marry for love, and money can come later, right? But I think there is a balance between the two, and right. and I think that's where people get tripped up, because people think you can't have both. And I think there's reasons why people think that. I mean, there's lots of Bible verses that people, and I'm a Christian, so I know them all, which is actually probably one of my problems, because
but I mean, that's what we grow up with and we see and we hear all over the place. So why would we think that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is it's not necessarily the context in which we're raised and grown up. And your family generally, other people will grow up in families similar to mine where they valued money, but they had the opposite reaction to that. And so instead of adopting it, they've decided, I'm going to be freewheeling and, just throw it out there and give it away. I used to babysit for this lady back in university. And I used to tell people, she's so nice, she'll give you the shirt off her husband's back. Because she'd give you absolutely anything.
She would. Yeah. I want to acknowledge everyone who is watching this. I know this will go on the podcast and people will be listening, but we do these live and people are listening right now. This is a very touchy topic. And I want to acknowledge everyone's feelings around this, because it's uncomfortable for me to talk about. Can I just say, like, I always promised myself I wouldn't talk about money on the podcast until I was more confident about the way that I felt about it. And I have spent the last 10 months studying it and talking to people and reading it. And I've read about 15 books about it. So I feel a lot more comfortable about it right now. But what I will say is, with all the neuro coaching training I've been doing this year, if you don't focus on something, you're not going to get the results. One of my mentors, I've got all these little sayings on the side. And it says, if you can't improve what you can't measure, right? And what you focus on grows. And so just to circle this back to pricing from money, they're intertwined, because the way you feel about money affects how you price things. The way you feel about yourself affects how you price things, and whether or not you value yourself and you value your time. But more importantly, value what you're giving to someone. And I want to just go back there. I think I cut you off because I'm pretty good about doing that. You were talking about the five steps. Yeah. So can you just repeat those again and summarize those for us?
I will. I just want to say one thing first. Okay. Yeah. So there's been a couple comments in here about, money is vulgar. I feel greedy. So this is the thing. Focusing on profit or money in your business doesn't make you greedy. It makes you smart. Yeah. You are a business owner now, ladies and gentlemen. You need to think about this in a different way. You're not going to be there 1, 2, or 3 years from now to serve your clients if you're not charging enough and you're not earning a profit in your business. And this is something that you have to figure out how to reconcile. You can do a lot of mindset work. Also, to feel confident in your prices, you base them on a concrete thought process. So you understand why your prices need to be what they are. You can, maybe if Kathy is watching, she can, or she can share maybe one time on the show how that worked for her, because when you understand where your prices come from, then you know that, okay, if I don't charge this, then I'm not going to have a viable business. So maybe I shouldn't even start it. And that may seem a bit harsh, but this is where a lot of my clients end up coming from. Okay. So, and it's not about chasing profit at all in any expense, but it is about understanding how you're going to have a profitable business.
I just wanted to pull this comment up. Sarah, one of our tech pixies, says, more confident when I'm giving it for free. Yeah, I know what she's saying though. I know what she's saying. So how do you overcome that? What's the question you ask yourself?
Well, I guess the question is, am I going to run a charity or am I going to run a business? Sarah, I'm sorry. Some of my clients have said, Janene, she doesn't really sugarcoat things. And it's true. Yeah. And it's not to be, in your face or anything, but if you really want to have a business, then you have to figure out how to get comfortable with that. And when you understand, if I charge this for this offer and I sell this many of these, I have this much money. And if I charge this for this offer and I sell this many of those, I have this. When you understand that, it changes your relationship to your whole business, not just to your pricing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now let's go back to your.
Now let's go back.
Wrap up on that.
So the 5 steps to pricing success. I used to be an engineer, so I studied engineering in university and I designed buildings. I love bridges. So my 5 steps to pricing success, I want you to think in your mind of one of those stone arch bridges. When you build this kind of bridge, you first have to put temporary supports in, and you build it from the outside. You go block, 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 right? So if you think of 5 blocks, the first block is mindset. So build the right mindset. There's 2 components here. One is understanding profit in your business. So is my business how I want to run it, what I want to offer, what I want to prices I want to have it. Is that a viable commercial model? Can I make money with this? Can I support my family and live the life that I want? That's one piece of it. And understanding how your decisions affect your profit. So if you choose to sell to this kind of customer versus this one, that will impact how you can make profit. If you decide to operate in this market versus that one, it will impact your profit. So it's all about understanding that relationship so that you can make better decisions. The second part of it is understanding those things that are getting in the way, the roadblocks, right? So your money, your worthiness, and your success hangups, for example, okay? So that's step 1. Step 2, which is the next block, but on the other side, the 2 main support blocks, that's called have an aligned voice. And this is about how you speak about your business. And I already gave you a really good example, so I'll repeat it again. If I go to someone and they say, oh, hi, Janene, how are you? I say, hi, what do you do? Oh, I work for a company where we make high voltage test and measurement equipment. Most people are asleep before I even finish the sentence. But if I say, we make lightning, that's exciting and it's interesting and it makes people lean in and be curious. And that's what you want. So how you talk about your business impacts people's perception of the value you can bring them and therefore what they're willing to pay. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that if I say high voltage test and measurement equipment, it's even sexier in German. Hochspannungsmaschinen und Geräte. It's terrible. Just terrible. But, even if I say it doesn't mean all bets are off, but it means everything else is going to be that much. I'm going to have to work that much harder to get them to understand the value. So those two are foundational elements. They kind of influence everything else that you're doing. Step 3, set the right prices, have a clear process for how to do that, have a pricing strategy. Your pricing strategy will tell you how to steer your business, how you're going to set prices, what prices you need to have, and how to execute them. Then the next step, number 4, is communicate with confidence. We can't avoid pricing discussions. Well, we can, but we shouldn't avoid pricing discussions with clients. We should understand the psychology of pricing. And I will tell you something, that pricing is more about the psychology than it is about the numbers.
Totally. 100%. I agree with
Absolutely.
that. All the way. It's about what's in between your two ears. That is 100% what pricing is about.
It is. And the best example I can give here is, imagine you're walking down the street and you see 2 lemonade stands. One says lemonade 50 cents. The other says lemonade 25 cents. Which one would you buy? Well,
it depends on you.
Yeah, it depends on the person. But what if the one that said lemonade 50 cents also says clean water included? Now, maybe here in Europe, you wouldn't think too much about that. But if you were hanging out in Mexico City and you saw that, you might feel like, oh, okay, I'm willing to pay 50 cents for that. No problem.
Yeah.
Right. Because the value, and it may be that, it's two siblings, mom's in the kitchen making lemonade. It's the exact same lemonade, but simply because one of them communicated it better, the value better, it put them in a more competitive position. So the psychology is super critical.
Love it.
Yeah. And then step number 5, which is the last brick that you put in there, it's called the keystone, because once you put that in place, you can take out all the temporary supports and it will stand freely without any additional support. The keystone is how you manage prices over time. The things that you base your prices on are changing with time. Your customers, the marketplace, your cost structure, your business, the things you want to do. You may have regulatory or legal things that change over time. Inflation changes over time. All of those things are changing in time. And so that may also mean that your prices are going to need to change over time. You need to understand when to make those changes, what changes to make, and how to do it in a way that you're not going to upset your customers.
Janene, how do I hire you? How does everyone hire you? Where do people find out about you? This is incredible.
Yeah, so you can find me pretty much everywhere. I have to confess, I'm not on Instagram, but most of the other social media platforms that you'll find me as the pricing lady. So LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever. I have a Facebook.
You gotta write a book.
Yeah. I'm that's on the list for next year of things to do.
All right, well, if you need help with an online course, let me know, because I think this is a course everyone in the world needs. Listen, this was amazing. I can't thank you enough for Kathy is such a good friend of mine, but she was so 100% right about you. You are the pricing lady. I learned a ton. And I definitely would love to talk to you about coming in and looking at how we've priced our stuff. That would be amazing. But gosh, if we were in a room, I think you'd have a standing ovation. So thank you for your time today. All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day and
enjoy pricing, everybody.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to definitely get you back on the podcast again.
All right. Thanks,
you, Joel.
Bye, everyone.